Hey guys, welcome back to Honey and Rock, episode 71. I'm Sophie, and today my guest is Bailey. Thank you
Hello.
for coming on. So I met Bailey through HisTurn, which we're going to talk about a little bit more throughout this episode. But my youth pastor was like, "Hey, come volunteer with me at this soccer program," and I don't want to get into it because we're going to talk about it. But that's how we met. And so on Fridays, I got to volunteer with her, and just hang out with kids and teach them about Jesus. And so that's how we met. And then I was like, "Okay, well, you come on the podcast now and talk about it," because I want you guys to know about it and know how you guys can be praying for this ministry and the cool things that come with it. So, the first question I ask all my guests is, what is your testimony?
So I was thinking about how I would talk about this here in front of, well, I don't know how many people watch this, but just like, how I would share it on a podcast format. But so I grew up in a Christian home, which I think if you had asked me my testimony a few years ago, I would have kind of said that in shame or more so, oh, my story's not special. Right. Yeah. This doesn't have meaning. But I'm thankful I did grow up in a Christian home. And I heard about Jesus all the time. And I don't know exactly when I made a profession to be saved from my sins, but I do remember a time that did happen. But it's interesting how God writes our stories, because I know you're a follower of Jesus when you get saved, but I don't think I really realized what that meant until college. That being a follower of Jesus requires sacrifice. Yeah. It's a personal friendship with God, and it requires you to be intentional and read in the Word. And and in high school, I had a lot of health issues, and with any health issue, maybe some of you all have had these, there's fear in it, and there's maybe some bitterness towards God. And I feel like bitterness towards God was one of the biggest things that came up. And I think that affected my growth in the Lord in high school. Though I did grow, it just wasn't as personal to me yet. Right. And so through the health issues and the fear and the unknowns, God really showed me that He sees me. He cares about my story. Yeah. And even though, I hear of all these amazing testimonies of people saved out of lifestyles that are really hard or circumstances that are really hard, I was reminded that my sin is against God, and I need someone to rescue me. And so God has been so good to help me to grow throughout college, and now I'm almost 4 years out of college, which is insane. And I would say I've grown so much. I mean, in HisTurn, I'll talk about in a second, so much as I'm out in the real world now, in a sense. Yes. Your faith, you really have to claim it, and you really have to say, like, I'm either going to follow Jesus or I'm not. Right. So that's very brief testimony of mine. So
that's really cool. That first, like the idea of the shame behind having a testimony that's not like something crazy, something I struggled with a long time too, because I almost wanted a story that was like super crazy, so then I could like guess what happened to me. Yes. And yes, I've had hard things, like a lot of really hard things, but I still grew up in a Christian home. I still came home to two parents who loved each other and loved the Lord. And, my extended family were believers. But then to almost look at the sweetness almost in that, like that God has been faithful to my family for this many generations. So it's like, it was easy for me to look at it in the same way you did. Like, this is shameful. Like, oh, like, yeah, I can't relate because I've just, grown in a Christian household. But, like, that's actually so cool. Like, the Lord has been so faithful through that way. And then the idea of, like, fear and how God almost works through fear sometimes, because I struggle with anxiety and kind of coming out a little bit on the other side of, like, learning how to fight against fear. But the idea that God provides peace that passes all understanding, and with health concerns or hard things or tragedy, the Lord provides so much peace, and it's just like, whoa, it's cool to see Him. Like, He works in so many different ways.
Yeah, we can't always see it, but He is working. And
right, and sometimes like in the moment you can't see it. But it's like after, it's like, oh, You did that. Okay, cool.
Yes.
So what is HisTurn?
So I'll briefly explain. I don't know if that's another question, how I got into it or not.
Yeah, it is.
So okay.
You can do it all at once.
Okay, so I graduated in 2020, the greatest year yet. And I didn't really know what I was supposed to do with the major that I got a degree in. So it's called exercise science. It's basically a sports degree. But I didn't want to do anything that all of the other classmates were doing. And I'm like, Lord, what did I do this for? Like 4 years of like worthlessness, it felt like.
Yeah.
But in the back of my head, I knew I wanted to do sports ministry, but I had no idea how that was going to, come to fruition. Like, where is there sports ministry in town? Like, I had no idea. I just think there's a lot of beauty with pairing a sport with telling people about Jesus. Yeah. I think it's a really cool way. And so through an internship that I had to do, I met the person who started HisTurn Soccer. And so at the time, this was the end of 2020 into 2021, he found out that I was interested in sports ministry. And he comes up to me and he says, so Bailey, you've done great for us at the business that I was working at. He said, would you want to be the director of this nonprofit I have? And I said, excuse me, what's a nonprofit? And I, through the next couple of weeks, I prayed, I sought counsel, and the Lord just placed that in my lap. Like, that is what we were talking about earlier. Like, it was very clear, like, this is what the Lord wants me to do. And so at the time, HisTurn was, it's like it had a very faint heartbeat. Let's just say that. That's the best way I can put it. So it was in existence already, but no one was doing anything really with it full time. And so, of course, nothing's going to really happen if no one's doing the work. And so God allowed me to come in, and we've grown the last 3 years. But before I talk about kind of what we do, I want to tell you why we are a ministry and a nonprofit. So maybe you all have seen this, maybe you guys interact with children, but children are losing hope. They're looking at their surroundings and not knowing how to process it. And especially the children we serve, we have the privilege of serving children who generally are in poverty. They generally don't have as many opportunities. They're underserved is a way to put it, or under-resourced. I don't always love those words because it feels like that's their title, whereas they are very worthy and very precious to God. And so they just don't have as many opportunities, is the best way I put it. And so they wouldn't be able to do a soccer program. Soccer's expensive. They wouldn't hear of Jesus unless someone's taking them somewhere to hear about Jesus. And so we love our kids. Our kids are precious to us, and we see that their childhood, and childhoods in general, should be full of joy and growth, but that sometimes doesn't happen because they don't have the same support system, and they don't have the same kind of group of people cheering for them, showing up for them in their childhood. And so we try to come alongside them, and we use soccer to be able to do that. And we do that practically by partnering with schools and churches. And so we have one public school right now, one private school, and then a church partnership, which is where Sophie helped out on our Friday program. And so we just see the need, especially even in the public school system. I mean, that's where the children are at, and our elementary age children is what we focus on. And the public school program that we have has been such a special thing, because when we go, our coaches will give a Bible lesson, and they'll share Jesus and obviously soccer skills as well. But we're able to pray over these children on the premises of a public school where Jesus is not named very often for, legitimate reasons. And so it's just like Satan hates that. Because these children who might never hear of Jesus, and they might be getting love at home genuinely, but maybe it's a distorted view, or maybe they just don't, that lack of opportunity doesn't let them have these options for activity after school. And so it is just such a privilege that we have, and we're still very small. But we are growing in 2024. We're so excited for hopefully getting into another public school.
Yeah.
Awesome. And that's kind of where we're headed. That's our trajectory, is to get into as many public schools as possible in the area.
What's really cool about it, it's like the idea of like you have to love first, and like love first, teach second. So it's like if they are going to hear what you're saying about Jesus, or even about soccer, for that instance, they have to know they're loved first. And what's really cool about it is like they are so loved. Just the hour I get to see it, and you're doing it all the days of the weekend. So just the idea of seeing them become and be loved and be welcomed, and then hey, here's some hope, and then let's have fun. Like the idea of like doing something fun, and I mean like that's obviously for kids is important.
Yes.
But even like as you get older, you still want the fun things.
Yes.
So it's really cool that like HisTurn provides both. Like this is going to be fun, and you're going to feel so loved, but then also you get the hope.
Yes.
Of Jesus through that.
Yes. And we try to incorporate, depending on the program, we'll incorporate maybe a craft time. I know we had craft time on the Friday program, or snack. We have different types of programs, so it's hard to kind of put it into one, box. But most of our programs will have a snack for them. We'll have fellowship with them. And so that whole person kind of goal is to create a child who enjoys their childhood, and who, yes, eventually we would love for them to follow Jesus. And I was thinking about this before I came, when I started 3 years ago in this work. I think I was like, I just want as many of these children to get saved, follow Jesus. And that's still my heart.
Right.
For sure. But as I've learned the last 3 years is a relatively long time in ministry. It's not crazy, but I'm seeing the longevity of ministry, and how there hasn't been one child necessarily that's come up to me and like, I want to follow Jesus.
Right.
But the Lord has showed me in his word and through counsel, I might just be the planter, and HisTurn might just be the planter in this child's journey towards Jesus.
Right.
And so I just want to love them. And the two things that I want every child to come away with when they leave our program, whether they age out, or a lot of them move all the time. So I never know when the last opportunity I have with a child is, or the coaches do. But I want them to know two things. One, that there's a team of people that are showing up for them, that care about their life, and are cheering for them as they grow into an image bearer of God.
Right.
And so they are an image bearer of God, but they don't know that most of the time. And so they can develop into that. So that's the first thing. I want them to know they are loved by this team of people.
Yeah.
And secondly, I want them to know that they have a God who radically loves them. And maybe they don't ever say that they believe that, and maybe they don't realize what that means, but I want them to know they have incredible worth in the Lord, and that they have a God who shows up for them specifically every day, but also through Jesus. And so that's the overarching story of the gospel, is we know. But those are the two big things that I just want them to take that with them throughout the rest of their life, because I won't be with them forever. And these coaches, that we have amazing coaches on our team, including Sophie, that pour into our children. And I all of our volunteers have shown the love of God to our kids.
And like for me, even like going to school every day, like the reminder of that is like I need to make other people feel that way. Like so even for my listeners, like if this isn't something you can volunteer in, or maybe an aspect of church or somewhere else that you can volunteer and love people this way, but like even your classmates or your neighbors, of like how can you make them feel worthy because they're worthy because of Jesus, and how can you make them feel radically loved? Like and so that's your goal for HisTurn, and so then I think that's a good goal for other people to have with people they know and see and come across with, like even like if you babysit, like how can you make this go farther than you're just letting the parents have a date night? You know, how can you make them know they're loved? And the importance of Jesus. And then I had another train of thought, but I forgot it. But that really is so cool. And then just the playing, and then providing for little ways, like maybe a snack, maybe some water, like little things like that of providing, and then just having consistently seeing somebody that's excited to see them. Like that feels good for anybody. Like if I see somebody who's excited to see me every time I see them, like, yeah, I want to keep spending time with them.
Yeah.
And then the part of like being saved is something I've struggled with. Like, wait, I feel like I need to see more people being saved. But then sometimes we're just responsible to be obedient.
Yes.
And if we're being obedient, the Lord is going to continue to work through us and work through what's happening. And someone has to plant a seed.
Yes.
You know, there's no flower being bloomed if there's never a seed planted. And it can be discouraging.
Yes.
Like, to only be planting seeds. And I've seen that in like other aspects of life too. But then like the hope of like, especially kids, is when they look back, they're going to remember like, oh, I went here and I felt so loved.
Yes.
What was that?
Yes.
Like, why did I feel loved?
What was special about that? Yeah.
Like, why did I feel special and loved and valued when I showed up here? And then they can look into that and realize it's Jesus. And then that starts more conversations, especially as they get older, which is something cool I've been learning about my little Sunday school class I teach. Is like, one day they're going to say, like, Sophie was my Sunday school teacher. Like, the idea that, like, so what seeds am I planting in their hearts? Even though right now they don't understand fully what's happening.
And I think children's ministry can be very challenging. Any ministry can be challenging, so hear me out on that. Like, every phase of someone's life is going to be challenging in its own way. But with children, from my perspective and some of the coaches I've talked to, is that it's hard because you do want to see the fruit of what you're pouring into these kids. And there's kids that we have, for some reason, they keep getting in the van, but they don't seem like they care about what we're doing, but they keep showing up themselves. And so it's like, you know that they want to be loved. Right. They're not going to vocalize it, some of them, because of the trauma in their past and various circumstances. But the fact that they keep coming reminds me, like, that's my role in their life right now. They might not come back next week. They might move. We had a child who really gave us a lot of trouble on our Wednesday program. And every week I dreaded because of this one child. I loved them so much. But then we found out they moved, just up and moved. And that's just what happens a lot of times. I was just reminded, like, we had about a year with that one child, and it didn't feel like there was ever any, like, oh, they love me back, or that's not the point. But it is nice. That does happen. So I don't want to make it seem like everything is drudgery. There's so much joy in this work. But it can be discouraging when you are wanting to see, we like to see results. I like to see results. And so when I don't have a result to even tell, like, donors, like, hey, this many children decided to follow Jesus, I think donors and people who support us recognize that that's not always the outcome of what we're trying to do.
And so to make this, like, apply to some of the listeners' lives, of, like, keep faithfully sharing and serving in whatever way God's calling you to do. So maybe that is just in a classroom, or maybe that's, you know, coming and joining a part of Bailey's team, or just another nonprofit in the area or your area. So whatever that looks like, is just continue to faithfully serve and make those around you feel loved and worthy, because they're a daughter or a son of the King, and God is doing the rest. Like, keep planting the seeds, and when you feel discouraged, stay close to the Lord and stay in His Word. You said something earlier that I really liked. Like, I prayed about it and I sought counsel.
Yeah.
Is that the right word?
Yes. Yeah, I think so.
I was like, wait, seeked it. And like sought counsel. And so, like, in different areas of my life, I'm working on that. Like, I'm making a decision for college. Have I been praying about it? And then I need to continue to seek counsel from people who love me and love the Lord most of all. And so, just like in different aspects of our lives, I also encourage you to do that. Like, where can you continue to pray? And then where can you seek counsel to encourage you and kind of guide you almost a little bit? Because I really like, you said that twice. Like, you said that about something else in your testimony, and then you also said that about being the director of HisTurn. And I think that's really important.
Yes.
And with being like, that kind of goes along with wanting fast results. Like, you want fast results of the kids being saved. You want fast results of your web page just loading fast enough. You know, we're like, we want things right now.
Yes.
Like Amazon, if it's 2-day shipping and it's not here in 2 days, I'm like, okay, I'm
bad review.
I'm gonna need a gift card. Like, and so just like being content and sometimes slowing down and praying about it and seeking counsel, and just like the importance of that. And so I really like that, like how you said that. And then the first time you said it, I was like, oh, that's good. And then the second time you said it, I'm like, oh, wait, that's really good.
Because God does, like in his word and just in life, he does surround you with people who are your cheering squad as you're trying to be that for other people. And you need people. I mean, like they can't satisfy you, but they can guide you. Like maybe you'll have a youth pastor or youth pastor's wife or somebody like that to just help guide you. And also if you have parents that you feel like you can trust, that's awesome as well. But I think even having people outside the family can be so helpful.
And I keep losing my train of thought because I was like I keep doing this. I like focus and I'm like, oh yeah, that's good. But yeah, the idea of like sometimes it's out of house, sometimes it's in house, and like sometimes you might be learning from someone younger than you, and that's okay. And sometimes it might be someone older than you, and that's also so cool. But what I was going to say is, I saw this. I listened. Maybe I read a book about it, and it said sometimes when you're holding back getting advice or counsel, you're keeping a blessing from somebody else. So it's like maybe they're praying like, Lord, help me bless somebody, like lead me. But then if we're too afraid to have conversations with people, we might be holding back a blessing for ourselves that they're going to tell us, or allowing them to bless somebody else. And so it's like people have good advice, people have good wisdom, and people want to pray for you. Like, and so sometimes out of fear, not asking for help or not asking is actually kind of hurting somebody else too. It was obviously said a lot smoother than that. But it just kind of encouraged me to like, it's okay to ask for people to pray for me about decisions, about little things. It's okay just to have like open-ended conversations with people, because the Lord might be putting something on their heart that needs to be said. But if we don't ever ask,
they won't
then
know.
They can't say it. Right. So lastly, how can we be praying for HisTurn and the ministry surrounding it?
That is a very good question. I would say pray for, we are hoping to add a new public school. I think I mentioned that a little bit earlier. And so that alone is such an amazing opportunity that we're hopefully going to have, but it does require a lot of conversations, hard conversations sometimes, convincing principals to let us come in and share Jesus. But I would say that's one of the biggest things. What does 2024 look like for us, and getting the volunteers we need? I mean, a plug that I'll put out there, we have volunteer positions open, and even if you can't volunteer, just if you don't have to be a soccer player, by the way, to volunteer.
I'm not.
She actually did a really good job. We do have some volunteers who have never touched a soccer ball in their life. They're not even in the soccer world at all, and they come and show up for our children. But yeah, so the biggest thing is adding that new public school program. And that also, I don't know if this is a selfish prayer or not, but that God would give me strength as a director to know how to grow, because I'm the only full-time staff member right now, and that can be challenging, and I feel very inadequate, which is a good thing, but that he would foster a sense of compassion and love in my heart and direction, that I would know where does God actually want us? Because in my own idea, I want to get to a new public school, I want to add this program. But if I don't go to the Lord, then it's not his part in HisTurn. And so that would be some of the biggest requests, I guess, I would have. And then one final little challenge that I've been meditating on in my own heart, my theme for 2024, it does kind of go along with HisTurn as well. So kind of connect it, is in the Bible. I think it says it in Psalms, and I think in Luke. Says he fills the hungry with good things. And so I would just challenge whoever's listening, myself and Sophie, are we hungry for these good things, or are we already filled? Because most of the time in 2023, I was filled with anxiety. We had talked about that earlier. I was filled with, specifically with HisTurn, but also in my own life. And I was filled with so many things. And it's because I was filling my mind with maybe something that I read that maybe I shouldn't have filled my mind with. And your mind is so important to your heart.
Yeah.
And so I would just challenge, like, if you're not hungry for God, then he's not going to fill you because you're already full. Right. You're already full of the things that maybe are not bad things, but they're not really good, the good things of the Lord. And so for HisTurn, I just feel like I want to kind of empty my mind, not in like a meaningless way, but just say, God, like, you get to decide how HisTurn grows.
Right.
That, like, I'm hungry for your idea of what this ministry is supposed to look like and how you want it to grow. And so that's the wisdom
so
I could muster out today.
No, that's so good. Thank you for sharing all that and being like a faithful servant of what the Lord is putting in front of you right now. And, just that one yes, like, yep, okay, one day at a time. Yes. And then just like the patience you have is crazy. Maybe you go home and cry about it, but like sometimes. In the middle, like she's trying to, like, she has her Bible open, we're all sitting crisscross applesauce on the floor, and she's trying to like talk, and their kids are just running. And you're like, hey, come sit down. And like, yeah, no, I'm not sitting down. And she just continues to speak with like such grace and compassion and just calmness that like they're still hearing it. They're still feeling the love and then still hearing the Bible and learning Bible verses. And
that's the Spirit's work, because you better believe in my heart at that moment, I'm like, sit down. I am about to scream. Like my anger I'm not naturally someone whose anger comes out a lot. It's more inward anger. Yeah. But I will say there are times, like you said, like I do go home, not as much on Fridays, but other days I go home and I'm like, Lord, like bawling, like, are they listening?
Is anything happening? Yeah.
Doesn't no one care? But I mean, you just got to keep showing up.
And then really that's how Satan wants to tear you down because he knows the Lord's work is being done. And like, if I can discourage her, then maybe she won't want to go into another public school. Yes. Or maybe she'll cancel this one day.
Yes.
Or exactly. Like that. And then that's kind of letting the enemy win in a way.
Yes. Yes.
Well, thank you for coming on.
Yes. Well, thank you for having me.
Yes, of course. And thank you guys for listening. We'll see you next week. Bye, guys.